This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
At Pepe Sayer, we focus on quality. So if someone comes into your restaurant and they see you're using Pepe Sayer, they know immediately that that is a quality product you've got in front of you on the table. And that comes from a decade of just doing quality butter day after day.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
When you're producing food, something tangible that is, that's going to feed people, whether that be here domestically or exported, it's a good thing to be involved in, to know you're making a difference, that you're helping feed the world.
This is The Producers. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The Reids have been farming in Mimosa for over 100 years. 6 generations of sheep farmers that have perfected sustainable and low-stress methods of farming. Lamb man Dan Reid and his family farm in the heart of the Riverina in southern New South Wales and supply Sydney with some of the best quality lamb in the country.
We farm in the Riverina, so it's about 4.5 hours southwest of Sydney, in between Temora and Coolaman. If you haven't heard of those towns, we're about 60 k's north of Wagga Wagga. Most people have heard of Wagga. And I'm a 6th generation farmer there. We've been there for over 100 years, our family. So, farming in the blood. It's beautiful, undulating country that has pretty reliable rainfall. We have had droughts. The Millennium Drought was pretty dire, but it is usually pretty reliable. Gets rain coming across from South Australia and from south and further north, and it's just beautiful red loam country that produces lots of feed, good feed, and has the 4 distinct seasons that in a place like, compared to, say, what most of your listeners, if they're from metro areas where there's not really those 4 distinct seasons, you really get that at home, and it's each season has its positives and negatives, obviously, for producing food, but especially fat lambs. Like Riverina is the home of fat lambs in this country. But we originally, it's my understanding, we came out from Scotland in the 1800s to Adelaide, actually, and then moved from Adelaide to Kerrang in northwestern Victoria, and then from Kerrang to Mimosa. So Mimosa was, which was originally, that's the area, and it was originally a large station. So and when the station was broken up, there were lots for sale, and that's when the Reids and some of the other family names that are in the area came and bought a allotment there, and obviously the allotments were a lot smaller. I can't remember what the original holding was, whether it was 500 acres or I'm not too sure, but and then over the years it's just grown and grown and grown, especially under my grandfather or my great-grandfather and grandfather. They bought up a few of the neighbours over the years, and now we've got around 10,000 acres. And, so how it's changed, I guess, is there's just less people around now to do the work, and we're machines and I guess science and technology, advances in technology have made jobs a little bit easier in some respects, but with sheep it is very hands-on. So it's we also plant crops, so that's sort of the gear to plant the crops has obviously gotten bigger and easier and more effective. But in terms of sheep farming, it is very similar, I guess, today as it has been for the last 100 years, except there's been a lot of changes in animal husbandry and making sure you can, I guess with research to what works to increase the the life expectancy of lambs from young ages and get them through to that ideal weight so they can be processed and enjoyed on a plate.
Popular cuts of lamb have changed over the years, but in Dan's family, when growing up, there was only one cut that hit the family table every week.
I bring this up actually to my customers at the market, is there was no slow-cooked lamb shoulders when I was younger. All our shoulders were cut into drover's cut chops, and we would have eaten, drover's cut chops, 5 or 6 nights a week with, your mashed potato and veg, and it was like being from a sheep farm. We would have eaten lamb, say, 5, 6 times a week because we just had a ready supply. And so those memories are my earliest, just of sitting down and eating drover's cut chops, just delicious. No matter if you burn them, and my mum's from the old school, tended to probably burn meat more than cook it medium rare, as is the way these days. But it was still very tasty. So they're my memories, and also just like camp ovens and cooking out in the paddock. There's some other early memories.
Although the family have farmed for over 100 years, Dan wasn't always headed for a life on the farm. Yeah,
I've done a few different things in my time. I went away to uni and studied journalism, and I was a journalist and lived overseas in various countries, in the UK for a couple of years, in America and Canada. So I've done a few different things, and then came home to the family farm, and that was... I definitely don't think I was always going to be a farmer. I think I wanted to do something different and go away to university and sort of explore something away from agriculture. But I guess the pull of the family farm, it's just such a fantastic asset, I guess, and the opportunity to be involved in such an operation was just too good to pass up. I was in London. I was living in London, and I'd go to the farmers markets there. I can't remember what it's called, the main one in the middle of London, and it was just booming. It was pumping, and there was a few meat vendors there telling the story of their farm and that sort of thing. And not that it didn't exist in Australia. Like, there obviously was markets, but it probably just wasn't as big and popular. And I just thought, when I get home, I think, like, we've got just as good a story as some of these farms. And I thought, well, when we get home, we'll give this a crack. And it aligned with my youngest brother. He just became qualified as a butcher. And so when I came home from London onto the farm, and we put our heads together, and because at that stage, lamb was about $4.30 a kilo, $4.30 a kilo. And then when I was in Sydney and having a look in butcher shops, and, they're charging $70 a kilo for cutlets. And I was like, something's going wrong here. We're selling these lambs for $80 a head, and, they're returning $400 or $500. And the producer's missing out. So we just wanted to cut out that middleman and take charge of our product. So that's what we did, and we built a butcher shop and got all the licenses, and sunk a bit of capital in for refrigeration and all the rest of it, and then got it off the ground. And like the market, it's the lamb market's very different these days. Whereas now, like last year, we sold some lambs at the sale yards for $11 a kilo. So that's nearly threefold what it was, 6 or 7 years ago. And so that's made, I guess the markets and the vertical integration less attractive. Like, it's still, we still do the markets every couple of weeks. But when you can just drop them off at the local sale yard for that great price, you don't have to run through all your extra costs of the processing and the transportation and everything. It's just a very, very different market we're operating in.
Mimosa use crossbred lamb that suit the farming conditions and deliver the best eating quality too.
We have first cross ewes, So their mother is a Merino and crossed with a Border Leicester, and that gives them a decent size of body, so they can carry twins, and they obviously need a lot of feed, but then they're very hardy, and they can survive through the harsh summers and also through the cold winters. And then we put a Dorset ram over those first cross ewes, and that is the most, I'd say it'd be the most common meat breed, and because it just produces an excellent shape of carcass, which is the key, and for your excellent looking cutlets and loin chops, so we used local rams from a couple of studs not too far from home. So and we breed our own first cross ewes. So with self-replacing ewe flock, and so we've used those same breeds for many years, like my father and then my grandfather before him. So it's proven, and just a proven breed, and just hangs up well beautifully in the butcher room, and is obviously excellent tasting. We get so many comments. Obviously, we've done carriage works for 5 or 6 years now, and we have the same rusted on customers from when we started there. That how much people just love our lamb. They're 100% pasture fed. So a lamb's born. Hopefully he or she has a brother or sister, or 2 brothers and sisters, triplets, which is ideal. But hope their goal is to get as many twins as possible. So they're born in those. That's really the key stage, like where you've got to go around the flock every day, checking that they don't get stuck in the birthing process. They're also, if the ewe can fall over, and so you've got to help them up and make sure that they're not down for too long, because then their legs can stop working, and that can all affect the life of the ewe. So it's really going around and ensuring that the lambs and the ewes are in good health in that key lambing period. So they lamb 2 times a year, in sort of early autumn, and then towards the start of spring. And so it's really key that you don't get any sort of infant, or you keep the lambing deaths to a minimum as much as possible. So they need to be in a small sheltered paddock, because it can get quite cold in the winter. And then they basically they live their life in the paddock. So we move them quite frequently from paddock to paddock, depending on the amount of feed they've chewed down. So they eat native grasses, lucerne. We also plant some oats and turnips and some different feed, paddock for paddock via rotation, because we also plant cereal crops. And basically the lambs are taken through till they're about anywhere between sort of 3.5 months to 6 months. And once they're big enough, once they get to the ideal weight, then they're sent away and to the abattoir, and then they return to us and hang in our room, in our butcher room, while we dry age them. And then my brother Jason, who's the butcher, he processes them. But they have a very they're free range, which many sheep in Australia are, but they're not fed any grain. They're not kept in any small confines. They're in large paddocks full of, especially the last couple of years, full of plenty of green feed.
As Dan explains, life on the farm is different every day. But the lamb have the most incredible life, which shows in their eating quality.
With farming, it's, some days are monotonous, and you can, like, for example, I mentioned planting the crop. So that can go for sort of 6 to 8 to 10 weeks, and you're just sitting on a tractor and refilling the tractor with seed and fertilizer and different things, and you can just do that same continuous action for a couple of months. but then every day can be different at some stages. Like with sheep, you can be marking lambs. One day you're moving them to another paddock. Then you're working on your marketing. You're fixing stuff in the shed. You're trying to improve your yards. There's so many. Every day can be different, but there can be periods of I guess repeat, monotonous. Like even shearing. So like shearing will go for a couple of weeks. And it's a big couple of weeks from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. Like you're out there in the yards sorting out the sheep, pushing them up, keeping them up, pressing the wool, getting it all sorted. Like so, it's a mixture of, I guess, you're doing different things, but you're also a bit of monotony as well. But then I get a bit of a break when I come up. Obviously to come up to Sydney and go to the markets and have that interaction. So that's great as well. And we obviously spend a bit of time in the butcher room, packaging up the meat.
It's not just sales and marketing and an avenue to market. Farmers markets provide a unique connection for Dan and his family to their client base.
The best thing about the farmers markets is the validation that you're doing a great job and that you're producing an excellent product. I think one thing that farmers don't have, or many farmers don't have, is that face-to-face interaction and feedback for obvious reasons. They're stuck out on the farm. So that was probably, I'd say, over the last few years, that's been the most heartening thing, is just to have that validation that you're doing an excellent job, that people appreciate what you're doing, and that you're producing an excellent product, and people use that as a centerpiece to their celebrations, like a slow cooked shoulder on Father's Day or Mother's Day, birthday celebrations. Like our customers are constantly telling me what they're doing with their lamb, how it's a part of their life and the celebration. So that's a really special feeling.
The life and times of a lamb farmer can get a bit crazy, and Dan's famous refrigerated ute has quite a story to share.
So I've got the people at the markets will be familiar, I've got a Hilux with the refrigerated back on it, and it was parked in a street in Sydney, and it was stolen. And I'm not sure how it was stolen, because I had both of the sets of the keys. And anyway, when I discovered that it was stolen, I thought, well, that's it, the ute's gone. But then it was used in several petty robberies around the inner west. It was popping up in suburbs here. I got a speeding ticket, actually. Got a speeding ticket, and had the photo of the criminal running through the red light. That it was missing for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I kept getting sort of notifications from the police, and then I put it up on a Inner West Facebook group, and someone said, "Oh, I saw that ute today down parked outside a pub," and I went down to the pub and it wasn't there, and chasing CCT footage and everything. And anyway, finally got the call from the police about, I can't remember, it was 4 or 5 weeks after it was stolen, that they found it in a dead end street, just parked up there. And then it sat in the police forensics for another 6 weeks, and it took me so long to get the ute back, and I finally got it back, and I walked in and opened the door, and there was a bag full of maggots in the cabin from a doner kebab I guess the criminals had enjoyed and left there, and so that was a big clean-up job, but I was very happy to get the ute back, but definitely one of the more bizarre happenings. Especially for this year. So, but another funny thing, Huck, that I did a while ago, well, maybe you need to see it, but I put a GoPro on a lamb, christened it Lamb Cam, and we put that on there just to show, what the lamb goes through in a day, and it was pretty hilarious. Well, it only sort of, the battery only went for about an hour and a half, but it just basically wandered around eating and playing with other lambs, and that was about it. But that was I think it's up on my Instagram, buried deep in there somewhere. But the old lamb cam, I never really took off lamb cam, but I thought it was an interesting insight.
Farming lamb is hugely rewarding, but as Dan explains, it has its challenges too.
The whole farming industry has changed. We're just going into a period now of Land prices are just astronomical and through the roof. Not dissimilar to how house prices have been in metro areas over the last few years, and that presents a lot of challenges for like a younger farmer, relative to the older generation, in terms of like financing and getting land and purchasing land in your own name, and the rising costs of machinery and obviously fuel and things like that it's a very challenging environment to work in. So you've really got to be on your numbers, and you got to do with everything within your control. But in farming, there's a lot of things beyond your control. Obviously, the weather is the main one there, and market forces. So I guess the effect on I'm just a bit. I'm confident about agriculture and our business in particular with prices that are pretty good for things at the moment, but I can see that there is some challenges ahead, and it's just going to take a lot of preparedness and planning to face those challenges.
Mimosa Valley Lamb is growing its flock and looking at new ways to take lamb farming into the next decade, mindful of the environment and making a positive influence too.
I've got a few things going on because I do some events and communications work for a farmer representative body. So I'm actually moving on from that and going to do some a role with an ag tech company. But so I've got that on the horizon. But in terms of the business, my brother and I have we've purchased some more lambs, so we've increased our flock significantly, and so I guess it's we've just got more stock to deal with, and it's a really fantastic season. So this is going to be the third in a row when there's just been a lot of moisture available. So we've got some excellent crops and plenty of feed, so it's just all set up for a rip-roaring harvest time around November and December, so that'll be busy. It always is, and it's an honest job when you're producing food for others. Like, there's a lot of bullshit jobs out there, I think, these days. Government's filled with them, and just when you're producing food, something tangible, that is, that's going to feed people, whether that be here domestically or exported around the world. I just think it's a good thing to be involved in, to know you're making a difference, that you're helping feed the world.
A staggering 6 generations of lamb farmers at Mimosa Valley Lamb have made a monumental impact on our food system by staying true to the land, to the lamb, and their customers too. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of producers, farmers, makers, and growers, the true lifeblood of the food industry. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast, or email us at producerspodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au.